We've got a caller on the line, George in Texas. Aloha, George. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I'm just getting sick and tired of these people. Why in the hell are they making Goldman Sachs out to be like they're all powerful and all-knowing, and all they are is a bunch of three-piece suit people in the office? If it wasn't for the police force, they would. If it wasn't for them having a lot of money, they make them bigger than they are. I mean,
well, you need to understand. Goldman Sachs has had a huge amount of money, and their executives have a habit of moving in and out of the government. There's this whole Goldman Sachs alumni in the federal government. They just sort of flip back and forth, and so there's a tremendous amount of favoritism and political pull. They're allowed to do things other companies are not allowed to do. They're one of the first that was allowed back into high-speed direct access computer trading, which had been banned after the disaster of the 1980s when these high-speed computer traders almost destroyed the stock market. And now Goldman Sachs is back in. Goldman Sachs has been at the heart of the plunge protection team going back to the 1990s. And because of that, they do exert a very great deal of control over the U.S. government. In fact, all of these major banks and financial institutions, including the Federal Reserve, which is a private company, it's not a part of the government, but they're in a position to blackmail the federal government. It's like the Federal Reserve was saying, if you dare audit us, we'll crash the economic system. And all these other too-big-to-fail banks are saying exactly the same thing. If you don't do what we tell you, if you don't keep giving us bailouts, if you don't let us go on with violations of Glass-Steagall, if you don't give us inside information, if you don't let us evade these laws, we'll do something that'll just crash the entire economic system. And of course, all of this is a direct result of President Woodrow Wilson and the Congress of 1913 ceding the money creation authority to a private bank, which was never in the Constitution. In fact, I would argue that the Federal Reserve is unconstitutional simply because it would take a constitutional amendment to transfer that authority over to a private party.
I'm just getting frustrated because, Andrew Jackson dealt with this when he threw out the second bank in the United States. The head of the Federal Reserve threatened to crash the economy. Well, you want to know what? Go ahead, crash the economy. You want to know why? We'll find our own system.
We need to go back to our own system. That we need to go back to the system that this country was started with. The government creates the money, spends it into circulation. It circulates through commerce without accruing interest and is taxed back at the end of the cycle, to balance the books. The use of a bank by the government, by business, by the population is optional. You could live your entire life without dealing with a bank if you so chose. The Federal Reserve Act took away that right to say no to the banks. It made everybody a customer of the bank, whether they wanted to be or not. And worse, it not only transferred the creation of money to the private bankers, it transferred control over the value of the money from the individual citizens to the bankers. Prior to this whole funny money system that came up, everything the Federal Reserve is doing now would have been a death penalty offense under the Coinage Act of 1792. While our money was coined out of silver and gold, the value remained a constant. But as soon as the Federal Reserve notes came out, which are redeemable in your slave labor, they can just print up as many as they want, and it makes each individual note worth less money. You have lost control over the value of the money you've already earned because of this.
What Goldman Sachs is doing? Morally, I don't think their scam can stand much longer, because I really think the people are staring right at them, and I just think in some countries going to be a violent revolution just to remove these people.
It's already starting. Now they're trying to do the counter-revolution in Egypt. Did you hear on the news? The military is saying, we don't care if you're all Muslims and you want to vote a Muslim government. We are going to make sure that you live the American way. The military commanders have been bought off, which is exactly how the CIA and Israel and Mossad, and that's how they do it. They go in, they find somebody that will take over the place and do things the way they're told to do, and it's the way the United States has been doing business, for at least the last century.
Well, it's just like with Russia. I have a feeling Putin, when he gets back into office, he's going to have to be hunting down Goldman Sachs people again, because
I'm sure that he will be. I'm sure that he will be. He's going to go after all of these outside-funded opposition groups as being subversives, which is exactly what they are. And I wish the United States government would treat the subversives we have with the same harshness, but they don't. Every time one of these Israeli subversives shows up, Congress opens their wallet and says, put it in there.
if the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, or the Carnegie Endowment Ford Foundation was in Russia, Putin would shut them down.
Well, it may get there. Putin is obviously very much fed up with the United States machinations, and now that they're trying to stage a color revolution in his own country, that's basically an act of war. When you send money and covert agents into another country to try and overthrow the government, that is an act of war. And our media is out there. I mean, they've already been caught. Fox News was talking about, the violent Moscow protests, but they're using video from the Athens riots. And you can see on the bank building in the back of it, Bank of Athens. And Fox News is saying, this is the scene in Moscow. No, it isn't. But again, that's how they control you. They lie to you.
Well, actually, the Russian people are pretty content with the way things are there. And they haven't had it so good than they had it for 100 years.
Oh yeah, they've got things tremendously better than under the USSR, and that's why they don't want to go back to that. All of this rioting and everything, it's agents provocateurs. They tried to do the same thing in Iran in 2009. It fell flat on its face. They're not going to get traction in Russia. The Russian people like things the way they are, and push comes to shove. Remember in World War II, these are people we cannot beat, even if it does not go to nuclear.
Well, I just say one thing. They're saying democracy don't. One thing I know about the Russian culture, they're a very autocratic society with democratic. There's always going to be autocracy there. That's the way the culture is. But,
we've got here in the United States?
We're kind of, but anyway, the thing is, like with the Russian, I know a person that works for the government. She's my lady I love, and the thing is, she works for the government. And I just tell her, watch everything.
Yes.
Because you don't know if they're going to try to pull a false flag and blame it on Putin for bombing one of his government building.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but we're at the point right now where the U.S. government is desperate for a false flag, for a really big bang that they can blame on Iran or China or Russia, because if the U.S. government is not able to get World War III cranked up to full tilt boogie rock and roll afterburner for truth, justice, mom, and apple pie, or whatever else that's going to be, they're going to fall apart. If Europe falls apart financially, the American banks are going to go down, the federal government's going to get dragged down with it. And I really see all this stuff about, FEMA camps and it's a Hail Mary desperation pass to get us to shut up and go along with the government. But I really think it's a monumental bluff.
Well, the thing is, if they try to start a war saying it's just as good as baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet, I'm sorry, the Depression, we can't afford a Chevrolet, we can't afford a baseball and a bat, and we can't afford an apple pie.
But we're
so poor.
Yeah, we are. We can't afford a new war. We're going to lose this one. The bankers don't care. They make money regardless of who wins or loses. But we, the United States of America, cannot win this next world war. Even with all of our nuclear weapons, all we can do is turn the place into a giant graveyard. We can't win it.
Well, I just hope we don't start a war and the banking system implodes for us all looking at them.
I think the banking system's already imploding. The banking system was doomed the day that they adopted a private central bank issuing the public currency as a loan at interest. And every country that has adopted this method of banking is in serious, serious trouble. But again, it's all an illusion, because all these trillions of dollars the bankers say we owe them never existed to begin with. It's a fraud. It's like rule by divine right and rule by chattel ownership of your body. This rule by compound interest, it's just another way to trick you into doing as you're told. We'll be back after these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I want to go back to this thing about the booga booga FEMA camps and all the rest of it. Because a member just put this article up at whatreallyhappened.com, basically saying it's a map of all the active FEMA camps. And it's this snapshot from Google Earth of the continental United States, and it's covered with little blue dots. And that's all I'm seeing are little blue dots. And the map is not clickable. It's just a bitmap. There are no actual coordinates for any of these things. There is a list of suspected FEMA facilities. And over the break, I went down here to Hawaii, because that's where I live at present. And it basically lists 3 areas that might be used for FEMA camps. They're claiming there's a cremation facility located in the hills above Halaba Heights. And then they're saying there's a detention transfer facility at the Honolulu Airport, similar in construction to the one at Will Rogers World Airport, and saying that it's a pentagon-shaped building. that airplanes can taxi up to. Well, I'm not seeing those in Google Earth, and I live here, and I've been all over the Honolulu airport, not only for traveling, but again, we shot a lot of Lost out there. We shot Forgetting Sarah Marshall out there on the far side, away from the commercial terminal. There's all the helicopter terminals. We used that for Forgetting Sarah Marshall. We shot some of the scenes out there for Off the Map, when they're leaving modern civilization to come down to their remote little location to do their hospital work. I'm not seeing the facilities that are being described. And so what I need you to do is, I'm putting this up and I'm going to promote it to the front page. And I'd like everybody listening to this show to go to this map that says this is where the FEMA concentration camp facilities are. And I'd like you to spend a little time, invest a little time, just pick one at random near where you live. Go in with Google Earth and see if you see something that actually looks like a concentration camp. Because I'm beginning to think less and less that this is starting to feel like a propaganda operation to get us to all go back to being silent little obedient serfs. Because I know what they're claiming here about Hawaii is nonsense. It's not here. The only one they've got here is, say, Barbers Point Naval Air Station, several areas that could be equipped for detention. Yeah, it's an empty field. You can put up fences and have instant detention. But all these other things about crematory facilities and all the rest of it, I'm not seeing it. If somebody wants to point it out, feel free. But I am getting a real strong feeling of fake out and USDA choice bovine excrement on this whole thing about FEMA camps and hiring the guards and all the rest of it. I think it's a fake out. I think they're trying to scare you into being silent. I think they're trying to scare Americans into abandoning the Occupy movement. I think they're trying to scare Americans into not standing up to the bankers. And I don't think it's going to work. Because the more I think about it, the angrier and angrier I am getting, and I hope you do too. So go ahead, and if you find something you think is a concentration camp, just go ahead and email me the exact coordinates or a KMZ file, or if you don't have Google Earth, go to flashearth.com. And you can create a link out of that will take anybody who gets that URL back to the exact same thing that you are seeing. And let's test this claim that there are FEMA camps all across America ready to house hundreds of millions of Americans who are a little upset over the loss of the Bill of Rights. I think it's a psychological operation. I think it's USDA choice bovine excrement they're hurling at us as hard as they can. Because they understand if the economy collapses, and it looks like it's going to happen, when Europe goes, it's going to take the American economy. We, the people, are going to understand it was the federal government that sold us into the bondage of a private central banking system which, by design, had to collapse. By design. Just a giant Ponzi scheme, and it's coming apart. And we're pissed, and we should be pissed. As I said during hour number 1, there is a reason that we evolved to feel the emotions of rage and anger. It's a survival necessity. It's the reason we're alive today, and those other hominids didn't make it, because we got angrier than they did. You shouldn't try and fight that anger or hide it or beat it down. It's there for a reason. It's there to give you the strength and energy to go out and deal with a threat to your continued existence in life. The bankers right now are starving America to death. You heard that story about that woman down in Texas. Couldn't get food stamps, shot her kids and herself. Meanwhile, we've got the Silversteins up there in Washington State, richer than most of us will ever imagine, and they still cheated the system out of, a couple $100,000 to go traveling around the world. The money junkies are a threat to the human race. And it's time we start treating them like that. So anyway, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to go out to this article. I'm about ready to put it up to the front, promote it to the front page. And your mission is to go out there, and if you see any of these little blue dots that are supposed to be FEMA camps near where you live, go into Google Earth or FlashEarth.com and see if you can find it. And if you find something that looks like a concentration camp, go ahead and email it in. And if you can't find anything, email me that and say, I looked all over and I'm not seeing what they claim is there at Fort Gillem or Fort Stewart or Clearwater National Forest or any of these other things listed in this article here. So we need to find out about this, because I think it's a fake out. And the more I look at this information, they're saying McConnell Air Force Base federal death penalty facility. Okay, how do you know? What is there that says this is what it is? I think it's a fake. I really do.